Hey, thank you very much for joining us here on the Cage Rage podcast. I'm Miguel, and I'm joined by Chadillac, and we're going to delve back into the world of stem cells. And we've got Soda Pop here, our Chad's son and our veteran Cage Rage podcaster. And he's been going through his recovery with us here on the podcast. He's made his second trip to Colombia, and he's been back a little bit. So we want to get some feedback, and we want to tell you a little bit, too, because stem cells, unfortunately, are back in the news. Donald Trump, the president of the United States, and legislation has been moved forward here that once again limit people's access and actually limit, any progress that's going to be made in this stuff, making, research illegal and things like that. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about those details, Chad? Well, what are we facing here in the States? Because what it amounts to is we have to go overseas to seek this treatment. And, by all accounts, the treatments are, a positive force and stuff. And the United States is falling behind on a world level. So there's like the concern at the level of your son, the patient, thankfully you're able to get to Colombia. But there is now, I don't think accessibility, everybody's going to be able to do something like that. So the United States is limiting, that for people and things like that. And it's just sort of, it seems like the United States is going backwards. So why don't you fill us in on the details and give us some more?
Yeah, so let me be clear on something before we go too much further. The only reason that we're able to do this right now is because we're in a research program. Had we not been in this research program, there is absolutely no way we could afford to do this at all. So we're with BioAccelerator in a program where wherein we can trust the people that we are going to. I say that because it's extremely important that you don't just pick up the phone and dial a number and say, I want stem cells, because you'll get some quack that'll say, well, I have a brand new way to do stem cells where we extrapolate the stem cells and then propagate them in a 3D chamber that allows them to propagate in all directions as if a sphere, which is totally ridiculous and it doesn't even exist. Or they'll say, listen, send us $20,000 and we'll send you 20 million stem cells. None of those that have gotten across the border and have made it through customs and people have received and tested have had any live stem cells in them. So don't go for that one either. You have to go to the source. That's number one. Number two, mesenchymal stem cells or mesenchymal stem cells, however you want to pronounce it, they are not a pluripotent stem cell, meaning that they don't have tumor-causing effects. They populate and then build a lattice around it. Now, we've talked about that, and you can go back in other stem cell Cage Rage podcasts, and you can check that out on Outside the Cage on our YouTube channel. So, having said all of that,
what's this legislation about this week?
So here's the legislation. The initial legislation was this, Miguel, and I don't think you were here for this either. I think you've been gone 15 years now, right? So the original legislation happened when Georgia, or maybe you were here, but not, but kind of you were floating around. So the Bush administration, George W. Bush, that administration, who was extremely conservative at that time, we thought, we see a completely new breed of conservative now. And I'm not picking sides politically here. I'm picking sides with science and with medicine and what helps my son. And you will do the same when it's your broken neck, when it's your son's broken brain, when it's your daughter's broken leg, when it's your spine that goes bad, or your father has multiple sclerosis, or any of the other things we can start to treat with stem cells. One of which is autism, by the way. And I don't know all the issues on that, so I'll leave that alone. But think about that before you make too many decisions on what your loyalties are and just how important things are to you. Now, let me explain to you what the Bush administration did first, because I think it's important to look back in history so that we can see it repeating itself. So the Bush administration comes in and says, anything that has to do with stem cells is done. We don't want you using fetus tissue, any fetal tissue of any kind. And because you're using fetal tissue to get these stem cells, which, by the way, by then wasn't even true most of the time. But because you're using fetal tissue, we're cutting it out. And he got reelected on that. And that's just how it went. That was called sequestration. And many scientists lost their job in the United States and said, you know what? I'm packing my bags and I'm going to Germany. Peyton Manning threw a record number of touchdowns. He went to 3 championships, won 2 of them, and won 1 Super Bowl and lost 1 Super Bowl after breaking his neck so severely from playing football that he could not use his right throwing arm enough to throw a ball 10 yards. He went and had neck surgery, followed up with stem cells in Germany, and then went on to do all of these great things. So don't tell me for a second that we don't know if they work, that we don't know what the harm versus good ratio is. That's a ridiculous argument to even try to make. Now, having said all of that, back to legislation. They sequestered everything and said, if you use stem cells and if you study stem cells, we are going to completely remove your ability to have any government funding, any state funding, period. So that's the first thing they did. Then that wasn't good enough for them because there were still people who said, we're still going to study this because we know that this is what the future holds and this is the way that a man who broke his back and is a quadriplegic is going to walk. This is how Christopher Reeves was going to walk one day. And he would have. They made all of that illegal based on idiotic assumptions that everything that was being done was being used through babies that were being born and then mutilated and killed, or through fetal tissue, which is, by the way, no matter what your thoughts are on that, the fetal tissue is getting thrown away. Aren't we wiser to use it for something than nothing? The answer to that, of course, was this will cause more people to have abortions. Here's what nobody really even understood and what they've done again, Miguel. The Trump administration has just said, no more stem cell treatment, no more stem cell studies. We're done with that. Because stem cell treatments are starting to become a thing in the United States, where you can go in, you can have them pull stem cells from your fat or from your bone marrow. They spin it down. Once they spin it down in a centrifuge, they separate the stem cells, put it in a growth factor, they let it grow, and whatever you have in there, they inject into the area. My Aunt Marilyn had it in her hip. It didn't work for her because she was 80 years old, 88 years old by that time, I think, and her stem cells just weren't enough. That's why it's so important that we have stem cells that come from a brand new source. This is where people get confused. So I'm going to answer your question now. The idea is that all we're doing is taking fetuses, dead babies, and we are harvesting their stem cells so that some greedy bastard can live a little bit longer. And that's not the case at all. The real case is stem cells are now made in a petri dish. So they take an egg and they take an ovary and they take a sperm and they put them together in a combination. And once the spark of life happens, if you will, once they populate one time, then they can harvest that, and from that they can harvest stem cells indefinitely from one. Now I want to make clear something. BioAccelerator does not even do that. What BioAccelerator does is they take it from adipose tissue out of the cord. So the umbilical cord, when the child is born, they sever the cord. They take the adipose tissue, which is kind of a fatty, whitish, clear tissue inside the umbilical cord, and they harvest that, and then they separate the stem cells, etc. What's happened in the United States, again, is people have said, well, this is using an abortion to get stem cells. Now, Gil, what to you sounds awry about that after I go through all of that? Why wouldn't we do that?
Well, I mean, to me, the situation there is that you're into a philosophical question. You know, you mentioned at the very beginning, even in a petri dish, when you put the cells together, and you said it, and it's your own words, you said the spark of life. So that is going to be what produces a philosophical discussion there.
Correct.
But my problem is I'm not sure that really has a place here. Again, Germany, you know, South Korea, China, you know, these countries are further advanced than us on the scientific end here and producing results. And our people are going to those locations to get the results because they can't get them here. That's what sounds awry to me, you know, because if it's happening in other places, they've overcome some of or are more informed on some of the details, like you're saying. It's not, you know, they're not raiding, you know, abortion clinics and you know, using material and stuff like that. So it comes back down to the life argument, right? And again, with the separation of church and state in our country, I would think that, you know, we'd be encouraging the science. We always did, and we were always on the cutting edge of the science, and we no longer are. So that's what I think is awry there, is that, you know, in this internal conversation that we're having in the United States over this, we're falling behind.
So here's what people kind of think are happening. They think one thing that's happening is that people are somehow, you know, raiding dumpsters behind Planned Parenthood, which none of that. I'm not even going to address that kind of nonsense because it's so ignorant that I just can't even begin to start to talk about it. But the reason that Peyton Manning went and had stem cells done in Germany and then went to 2 Super Bowls and 3 championships is because he had stem cells injected into his neck when he couldn't throw a football 10 yards prior to that. A year later, he threw the most touchdowns ever in a single season, the most yards. He broke all these different records, etc. So we know stem cells work. We know that. My son is living proof they work, and they work with little to no side effects. We know what the side effects are, and we know how to deal with those. We know when not to use it. We know that in the United States, it's now being used, and suddenly it's cut off. And it's become this idea that no stem cells can be used in the United States, and we're not doing this anymore. Why would that happen?
Yeah, I was going to ask you that question. What's the motivation for that? Now, is it Trump?
Follow the dollar.
That's what I was going to say. Is it
follow
Trump,
the dollar?
Being influenced by, you know, an elite of pharmaceutical companies and medical establishment, and basically
Miguel,
that establishment that doesn't want, you know, that sees maybe their way of doing things, you know, hitting them in the wallet, like you said.
Yeah, Miguel, look, it's
that
like
really
this.
Is it that simple?
It is that simple. In the United States, it's not just that simple, but that is the driving force behind the legislation and reneging on what Obama went in and fixed that back, and not just Obama, the whole administration, the United States government and legislation looked at this and said, we're being archaic fools on this. And a lot of that happened when a couple of upper echelon congressmen, when their children and their wives and their spouses were hurt, and they were like, well, if you had stem cells, this would be good. And they went out of country and got stem cells and said, you know, maybe we should do something about this. Because right now, the only people that this is available to are people who are extremely wealthy or someone who gets lucky like us and got into a program. Okay. And that's a tedious, thin line that we hang on every day to try and stay in it. We're scared every day that we don't get another treatment. That's how effective these are. People get to walk again that haven't walked. People get to talk again that haven't talked. And you want to try and battle me about something that happens in a petri dish? That is stupidity. However, you are right. In the petri dish, if you want to say that is life, and I did say you basically have to wait for the spark of life. In other words, you have to wait for meiosis to happen. And then once that happens, boom, you have a propagation of cells. That's all it is a mass of cells. It's not a fetus. It's so microscopically small, but you need a really good microscope to really see it and understand what they even are. Now, what's happened is this. All of these doctors who went through 15 years of learning how to do this knee replacement operation, how to do this shoulder surgery operation, and this hip replacement operation. Mark Coleman had hip replacements, 4 of them. 4 hip replacements Mr. Coleman's had. The first champion of the world. What if he could have received stem cells, Miguel, and not had those hip replacements? For one thing, who's going to pay for that? You know? Oh, well, and I don't mean who's going to pay for the stem cells. I mean, who's going to pay for the loss of the hospital and of the doctors not getting to bill somebody hundreds of thousands of dollars for this treatment? Yeah, that in and of itself answers everything you need to know. Big pharma. So the United States, we are our number one export in the United States is our intellectual properties. Okay. So our intellectual properties, not medical, by the way. Well, medical in terms of medical devices, things that we can use. But the real medical miracle out there is stem cell and CRISPR-Cas9, gene editing, 2 things that we bitterly frown upon in the United States that the rest of the world is doing and are surpassing us so fast it's ridiculous. In fact, we have to get on a plane with passports, travel to another country, be there for days, be in a hotel, spend all kinds of money that we don't have because we're poor from all of this, just in order to allow my son an opportunity to have a normal life. Do you understand that? My son can have a normal life. No, and you're trying to take that away from me because big pharma and big medical industries aren't making billions of dollars.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Are you serious?
The cycle is, not only the doctor with the operation, and that also involves a lot of arrogance because it would involve some retraining, some admittance that the methods that you went to college and university and med school for 20 years ago are no longer suitable, and you're going to have to it's medicine, right? It's not like, oh well, yeah, I brushed up on it. No, you're going to have to be retrained seriously to do everything. So people might chafe on that, but on top of that, they did the knee operation. I'm going to give you a month of oxys, and pharmaceutical companies are all happy with that, et cetera, et cetera. So it is a tag team of scientists or companies that you would think if they were forward thinking and were truly pursuing the best benefits would be firmly behind stem cells. I think if you talk to every doctor in med school, where they're still young and philosophically like wanting to save the world and find a cure for cancer, stuff like that, they would all be for this research. And then all of a sudden they get into the medical establishment in the States and everything that they're, the establishment's already against this sort of research. So it does seem like, again, the United States, the long and short of it is for an observer and somebody who's not involved, with personal end of stem cells or anything like that. I don't need, so it's like, I'm cool with it. I could not care about it, but I do have to care because as an American too, I see America falling behind here on another situation. The CNN yesterday put that, that somebody did an analysis and China could have our military overrun in hours in Asia. That means Japan, Philippines, and a lot of bases that Korea, we have a lot over there. And it would just take them a couple of hours to eliminate us. We're falling behind on many ends and we let ourselves drag down. So I think it's just another symptom of a greater bad. But this one might be in, at a personal level for you, for people in your situation, a friend for you. This one may be the worst of all. The worst, most anti-citizen move. Even religious people who might want to make the argument may one day find themselves faced with a situation where only stem cells are their hope. And
My aunt was vehemently religious. She was a devout Christian her entire life. And when it came down to it, she said, "Oh, you know what? I think I'm very much ready to try stem cells now." When she was at the end of her life, she couldn't walk. She was in agonizing pain. And had she been able to fly out of country and get the right type of stem cells, she would probably still be living today, for one thing. But she certainly would not have suffered the way she did her last 5 years of her life. That she would not have done. Now, let me ask you this, Miguel. If you break your neck tomorrow and you go to your insurance company and you say, well, I'm sorry, not break your neck. You pull your shoulder out tomorrow. Or better yet, let's talk about the knee, because I've got a better example of a knee. So I just recently was, and I don't want to name drop or put somebody else's information out there without their permission, but I was talking to an elite athlete who had had 2 knee replacements. He played basketball and another sport, and I'm not going to get into all that, but he played professional sports. And because of that, he'd blown his knees out. He's a very big man, and that's a common thing for, in the NFL or whatever. These guys they're cutting back and forth, and they blow their knees out. Their career's over. Well, now you can go in and you can kind of patch it up and do certain things. And I've had a partial knee replacement on my right knee, so I know what it's like. Extremely painful, requires a lot of drugs to get through. And then when you get off of it, you got to get off all the drugs too. And it's extremely expensive, and it's a long, long process. It took me almost a year before I was back to what I would consider full participation. He said the same thing. He recently got stem cells at BioAccelerator. He is, and I can't mention any names because it's not my business to do so, but he was in Medellin at BioAccelerator. He had 1 injection in each knee, I believe. I might be wrong about the amount of injections, plus the IV and a couple other places. But basically, it was in his knees. And we're going to have an NHL player come on and talk to us about the miraculous things that's happened to him. It's absolutely unbelievable. And he is, this is an old, not an old man, but I mean, he's eligible for AARP, and he is walking around now and cannot believe the difference that he feels. And he even said, I wish I would have never done the knee replacement. If I'd have just had this, I could have done it. Now that brings up the real topic as to why a sector of people are lobbying to make this illegal in the United States. And we must fight against that. So I'm asking everybody, call your congressman, call your representatives and say, we want stem cells in the United States so that we don't have to go out of country and do it. But until then, don't get that knee replacement before you talk to somebody at BioAccelerator. Don't do that. Leave the country, go down, get a shot, give it 3 months. If you need to go down one more time and do it again, so be it. You're going to be so much happier with the results. You will not believe the difference. I don't want to sound like a BioAccelerator commercial, Miguel, but that's simply the facts as they stand. So I'm going to stop at that. I don't know what else to say other than that, Miguel.
No, and I'm with you. And, just to harp a little bit for BioAccelerator, the situation is this, is that's not going to change if you're an American. You're going to need to have to leave the country and go somewhere to do that. Now, BioAccelerator is starting to get a reputation, across the board here, not only in the sports and entertainment world where you've seen several people in public benefit, from use there, but also, on a private level like yourself, you're not a real celebrity, or, your son isn't, but they're also involved on a couple of different, levels there. So I think, when you do your due diligence on this stuff, you're going to come across the name of BioAccelerator, and you're going to be happy because one of the things I've also done is I've been looking to see, about stories, even if it's just someone who says, I blew my money, but I didn't really get it. And there's not really anybody that is doing anything besides really stay. Nobody's saying it was expensive. Once the benefits hit, the price doesn't come up or anything like that. And again, if you look at it and you hear the numbers and you go, well, I can't do that. My kid, got run over in the parking lot at my job where I work for $9 an hour.
You can't.
You can't. That's the reason to call your congressman. That's the reason that you should be actively worrying about this stuff in the United States, because you've made it an elite thing. You've made it so that you can hear about it, you can see on TV about it and stuff like that, but people having to leave the country and stuff like that. God bless those that can and keep doing it, and BioAccelerator is the place to be. But if you don't call your senators, it's always going to be that way.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, Miguel. And I said I was going to sign off with this, but I do want to put a caveat in there that BioAccelerator is a family-operated business, and they are in this to help people. Believe me, they have done a lot for us. I can't even begin to explain that, and probably shouldn't, because it's just personal and it's kind of tacky.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, if I didn't sing their praises, if I didn't see what I see in my son, if you went through what we've gone through, 6 years of him not growing, not changing, not doing anything. He's been hurt for 9 years. The last 6 of it, we have walked through everything we've done, and we do everything. Most people quit after 2 years. Most people quit after a year. Look at Matt Hughes. Look at him. Look at his face. Listen to him. Read his text and his Instagrams. You want to know if stem cells work from BioAccelerator? There's your answer. Why are we making it illegal in the United States? Why is it that Miguel, why is it that, God forbid, your mother fell and hurt her hip? Why is it that she couldn't go and use her insurance and get stem cell injections in the United States and be better, instead of having a major hip replacement, if she can even live through it, because, my father just went through another major surgery, and it's horrible. If you could get an injection of stem cells, an injection, why are we allowing legislation to dictate the length of our lives and how they will be ran, and the level of our lives and our ability to live them? We need to be telling them what to do, not the other way around. And right now, big lobbyists from big pharma, big medical, big hospital, and big insurance are saying, we don't want these stem cells around. So they stir people up and they make them believe this false narrative about dead babies and all of this horrible, awful, terrible stuff that's just not true.
Well,
and so I'm just asking you, I got to be done there, because I'm sorry, I shouldn't get this upset, but it's very difficult for me to I wish that person would quit. It's very difficult for me to not be personal about it.
To remove the emotion from it. I understand, but let's just wrap it up this way. The bottom line here is, and one of the things that we've been focusing on, the outside the cage portion here at the Cage Rage podcast, is sort of this class war that seems to be going on, and that there smoke and mirrors are being used to divert from what the real problem is. And to me, that is, once again, big money and the elites pushing their interests outside of a general interest here. And as you said, this is a good example where you've got lobbying of the government by people that are looking to move an interest that isn't the common interest of the American citizen. And I just, at the end of the day, it could get lost, with all the shootings and all the, racism and the cop violence and things. There's so many hot flashpoints that get you talking and aggressive and stuff like that, this one might get lost, in the shuffle kind of thing. And it really shouldn't get lost, because what you have here, like I said, is you got Big Pharma against the people of the United States. And even if you have a religious feeling or religious belief that prevents you from that has you on the side of the lobbyists, so to speak, on a philosophical level, then hopefully your life progresses in such a way that you don't have a situation where someone says to you, stem cells will work, because then you are going to have to rethink it. And if you look at it in those types of terms, of all the gun shootings, it's like, God forbid, hopefully your sons are all and daughters are all safe in schools, and that doesn't happen, right? With that, this may be the most personal attack on us. Limiting your ability to get medical work is such a blanket attack on America that I don't see, how it can last if people were really educated. So I hope that we're taking one step towards that. And I want to thank the people at BioAccelerator again, because without them, we wouldn't be having this conversation. It is a conversation about progress. It is a conversation about Soda Pop and Chadillac, who are the stars of the show here on Outside the Cage. I'm Miguel Durati. This has been one more stem cell podcast here, getting you guys up to date and keeping track of our odyssey with the stem cells. Chad, any final words?
Yeah, just one more thing. I want to point out, and I want to make this prevalently clear. BioAccelerator has not, does not, never will use fetal tissue for what they do. I'm only saying that fetal tissue is being used in the United States to hinder other research that's going on that has nothing whatsoever to do with fetal tissue. BioAccelerator does not use fetal tissue at all. I want that to be known. Thank you, Miguel. I'm good. I really appreciate everything.
No problem. And once again, signing off here at the CRP, catching up on the stem cell issue. Major legislation passed this week that should raise people's antennas. Give us a look and a like and subscribe. And periodically, we will be doing more podcasts, keeping us up to date on this very serious issue.
Thank you.